Are you a business owner stuck in fear, doubt, and worry about what the marketplace will look like in the future? Then this show is for you. Strap on your seatbelt and get ready to disrupt and innovate. Here's your host, Lisa Levy.
Today on Disrupt and Innovate, I am honored to welcome Dr. David Gruder. He's an organizational psychologist, board-level advisor, and a 12 award-winning author. He equips innovative leaders with the mindsets, skillsets, and habitsets to make integrity profitable, collaboration fruitful, and impact scalable. As a master architect of culture and the C-suite, he helps owners and executives become who their ventures need them to be, maximizing positive impact and profits without sacrificing well-being or values. Get ready to navigate towards the North Star of integrity. David, welcome to the conversation.
Well, thank you, Lisa. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Let's start with setting the tone for the audience. And what is the work that you're doing today, and why is it so important right now?
Right. Well, I characterize myself in a not completely tongue-in-cheek way as a recovering psychologist and professional troublemaker. And inside of that, my main focus is on doing my part, the part that has been downloaded to me as my part in helping humanity elevate from Homo sapiens to our next species, because the Homo sapiens species is over and our next species is in the process of emerging, even though there's a lot of static around it. And I call that next species Homo Spiritus, meaning human spirits, where we are conduits, worldly conduits of higher love, wisdom, and power in helping to finally harmonize self-sovereignty and societal and collective well-being. Oh, yes, I absolutely do. What I have no faith in is how long it's going to take before the shift reaches critical mass. So I used to predict that starting right after 9/11. I started making predictions about when this would happen, and I have been 100% inaccurate. So I've given up making predictions about time frame. But for me, this shift is inevitable.
And why is it inevitable?
Because Homo sapiens is outdated. The version of over-identifying ourselves as human animals, which is not to deny that we're in bodies, no denial about that, but to over-identify our identity as human animals rather than as human spirits is responsible for the mess we're in today in the first place. And it has more or less served humanity in better and worse ways over the past umpteen thousands of years, but it no longer serves us. So the shift has to happen. And in fact, there actually are three different versions of the future that are vying against each other, if you will, for which one will dominate. And I've signed up for the version of the future that I call Homo Spiritus.
And what are the others?
Well, I'll say what I call them, and then
Sure.
I'll
From your
I'll say
perspective.
what they mean. What's that?
From your perspective, what you gave me a list of three. I want the whole list.
Yeah. So the other two I call one Homo Deus, which is what Yuval Noah Harari called it. He coined the term in 2016, which basically means human gods, where we're smarter than source. We're so far beyond spirituality that we're entitled to create whatever future our egos want us to create. And the other future is the regressionist version of the future, which can't happen anyway, because the regressionist version is about trying to take us back to an idealized, sanitized version of the past, which is never going to happen anyway, because we can't go back to the past to begin with. But secondly, the version of the past that the regressionists advocate isn't real to begin with. And both of those other perspectives have grains of truth in them. For example, the regressionist perspective part of it is about bringing forward universal principles of ethics and integrity and things along those lines that deserve to be brought forward and need to be brought forward into our future. And the Homo Deus version of the future is very aware that technology is simply a tool and it can be used for better or worse, but the Homo Deus version of the future actually makes us servants to the technology rather than the technology being a servant to us.
Anyone.
It
And
doesn't.
it,
And
it
yet the
absolutely,
propagandists are doing an incredible job of manipulating people into believing their agenda and believing that their agenda is good for us. And that's why there's a time lag or a delay in the full emergence of Homo Spiritus, but it will prevail eventually.
with no predictions of timeline.
I wish I could. But like I said, I've been 100% inaccurate for the past 24 years, so I'm not making predictions of timelines anymore.
The three perspectives that are in play, I think, are, from my perspective today, Homo Spiritus is the quiet one that nobody's talking about and nobody's thinking about. I am incredibly curious in that you believe that ultimately that is the long-term play and that becomes the winner, because the other two right now are very loud in our world. And we're on this podcast is about disruption and innovation. And when I talk about disruption, and what we talk about here is disruption that is driving for a positive impact, a positive change. And what we hear in the noise in the world around us today and in the voices of the other two approaches is that negative version of disruption. We're making noise for the sake of noise. We're pounding on our drums as loud as we possibly can. Hear me now. How do you quietly and with grace and poise navigate through to see the path that right now that Homo Spiritus could actually become and emerge the winner?
Right. Well, it actually is emerging. But here's the thing, the people who are in support of what I call a Homo Spiritus future, and others have different names for it, like Homo Lumina, and there are other terms for it. But regardless of what it's called, the people who are making progress in that direction are deliberately flying beneath the radar because the media only covers sensationalist extremist insanity. And the people like me who are pursuing a Homo Spiritus future are largely operating underneath the radar so that we don't attract attention of the sinister ones who will try to cancel us out. But don't mistake the relative silence about this with it not going on. That's a deliberate strategy.
And so that's that's the idea of ultimately a grassroots movement, right? That this is going to gain momentum quietly, with intent, with purpose, by people who actually get what the future can and should be. And at some point in time, no prediction required, there will be a change, right? Because the force of the numbers of the people will outweigh and overshadow the voices, the loud voices of the others that have eventually become a minority.
Yes, and I've created an institute to help this happen, at least one version of helping this happen. And the support that I am seeing is basically a version of where have you been all my life? Not David, but where has this vision been all my life? So the support is there from today's silent majority. They're just looking for an articulation of this that they can stand behind.
And I'm sure that not just an articulation, but a maturity of understanding and acceptance so that we can actually, the word adoption is not quite right, but realize, actualize might be better words, this future state.
Exactly. And so I've developed an entire framework that's practical step by step capacity building that enables us to walk the talk and facilitate the change.
Well, talk to me a little bit about the framework. Describe that for me.
Well, I call it the Spark Blueprint. And Spark is an acronym that ends in the letter C rather than K. And the each letter stands for a specific ingredient in the blueprint. So the S in Spark is shatter spells. Get free of the propaganda, get free of the delusional messaging that is causing people to slip into either learned helplessness or dysfunctional outrage. And both of those, both learned helplessness and dysfunctional outrage, do not and will not take us where we need to go. So shatter spells is the S. The P is once you're free of those spells enough to picture the future you most want. That's the P in Spark. Picture the future you most want for yourself and for humanity. The A in Spark is align what I refer to as your dual-pronged purpose in helping that future emerge. None of us can make the future emerge by ourselves, but if each of us is fulfilling our appointed purpose in helping it emerge, collectively, all bases that need to be covered will be covered. And if you want me to double back to talk about dual-pronged purpose, I can do that. But let me finish the acronym first. The R is once we're clear about our dual-pronged purpose in helping our desired future emerge, then the R is rise. Rise our capacities to actualize our purpose. And the C in Spark is collaborate to amplify your effectiveness in actualizing your purpose in helping that future emerge. I view the Spark Blueprint as the 21st century version of the human potential movement, which I've been an innovator in since the 1970s.
It's the natural outgrowth to get to the next level.
Yes.
David, on this journey, I have to imagine that there are some challenges that you've faced. How are you navigating through? Pick one, because I fear there's more than one. I fear there's
Yes.
more than one whenever we're trying to challenge a status quo, or heaven forbid, in this case, actually create paradigm shift. Talk us through how you're facing challenges and the roadblocks and navigating through.
Yeah. Well, you're right. There have been a number of them. And the one that I'll feature, at least to start with, is the one that I've had to deal with that I have found that virtually every other light bringer has a version of themselves, which is the crucifixion script. If I really bring my full light to the world, I will be assassinated. Now, it might not be physically assassinated. It might be character assassination. It might be canceled. I'll be canceled. But it's one version or another of I will be the sacrificial lamb if I bring forth my full light in the world. So that was the first one that I really had to tackle, and I bring it up, like I said, because I think that is almost universal among light bringers.
And so, how did you address that, right? That is one of those things that there are people who believe that when we're talking and we're putting ourselves out as thought leaders and we're sharing ideas and concepts, that we really aren't making an impact until we have some haters coming back at us, right? If everybody agrees with what we're saying, right, that's way too easy and we're not necessarily making the points that we probably want to be making. But using this challenge that you've faced, and I am sure continuously face, right, that if I bring everything I have to offer, I will become a martyr, a sacrificial lamb, right? In some way, shape, or form, I am going to be eliminated from the conversation. That has to also reoccur. How do you deal with that and keep going?
Well, first of all, the inner work has been around fully embracing the part of my dual pronged purpose that has to do with my soul growth mission. And my soul growth mission is to fully get in the core of my being that nothing in the physical universe can either harm me or save me. Now, I don't mean on a physical level. I could certainly be harmed physically, but the essence that I am can neither be harmed nor saved by anything in the physical universe. So that healing piece, healing trauma that resulted in my not believing that has been the inner work. The outer work is something that I've specialized in literally starting when I was 16 years old. through a traumatic experience I had then, which I can share or not, depending on what we have time for. But it's about having learned how to say what needs to be said without watering it down in language that people can receive without going into fear or shame or rage. Now, that doesn't mean that nobody has a negative reaction to what I bring, but it means that I have multilingual, if you will, capacities to minimize the chances of that happening. I mean, I've given medical grand rounds presentations on energy healing, and I've had the doctors and nurses eating out of my hands because I can articulate those dynamics in language that doesn't scare them and make them defensive.
So, in that particular situation, you're not talking woo woo to scientists.
No, I have one foot firmly planted in woo and one foot firmly planted in communication effectiveness.
And by what, through that becoming a universal translator that can speak to the things that actually matter to them, right? The medical field
Yes,
is one I talk about a lot. And healthcare practitioners want to care for their patients. And there is much about science that does not do that effectively. That to be able to make the connection to a little bit of woo to actual science has to be really impactful for them when that light bulb goes off because you've communicated to them in language they understand, that they aren't resisting, that they aren't fearful of, that doesn't diminish their value proposition. And they can then take from that things that will be highly impactful to the future care that they provide to patients.
exactly.
What a fantastic example. Thank you for that one.
Sure.
While we're going through this, you've brought it up a second or a third time, and I didn't give you a chance to really describe the dual pronged purpose. Let's dig into that for a minute.
So again, this is the A in Spark, the align step, where we're aligning our dual pronged purpose with doing our part to help our desired future emerge. The dual pronged purpose, as I see it, is that in the purpose based world, the primary focus is on the part of our purpose that has to do with our impact mission in the world, the kind of impact we want to have, which is really, really important. But what's under addressed significantly in most of the purpose based world that I've been exposed to is the other prong of our purpose, of our dual prong purpose, which is our soul growth mission. Because if we don't have interplay between our soul growth mission that helps our development, help us embody and facilitate the future we most want, then we're an empty thought leader. We're a thought leader that's operating with one hand tied behind our back. And if we're only about our own soul growth and don't care about having impact in the world, then we're being narcissistic. So it's got to be both, and they've got to be interplaying with each other.
And I bring that back around because I think that it connects to the inner work and the outer work. Right?
Yes,
That those two things connect very appropriately, that when we're looking at that soul growth part of the mission, right, that is our inner work. And as we're refining and tuning how we're delivering and creating or driving impact, that's our outer reach and the things that we're doing that affect others. And to your description earlier of working with medical professionals and being able to work with people on where they're at. Let me make that a really simple statement, right? You meet people where they're at in that impact and outer work zone. David, this is so amazing, and so somewhat really very different than any conversations we've ever had here before. Is there a piece of this equation, if somebody is listening and they want to learn more, how do they dig in and start to understand the Spark framework or learn more about you or the institute that you're building?
right. You can learn about all of what I'm doing, including my Center for Enlightened Self Sovereignty, at my main website, which is drgruder.com.
Fantastic. One-stop shop, easy to find, David, and we'll have the URL in the link so that it's really easy. In the course of this conversation today, David, you have left me with an aspirational goal personally. I won't say that I own this title today, but I someday want to be a professional troublemaker. That
It's a
is
lot
like
of fun, let me tell you.
life goals. I'm close. I think I'm close, but I think that that's some aspirational growth for me. The idea that we've talked through today with Homo Spiritus is not the typical conversation we have here, but it's a conversation I wanted to have for the audience because we are in a time where we see a lot of strife and turmoil and noise. There is so much noise in the world around us that I wanted to share your perspective and have you share that there is a light at the end of this tunnel, that we are on a path to something that is better. And even though we may fear that the noise is winning, that silent majority is deliberately out there building for what our potential is and what the future is when we actually achieve, right, our highest levels of wisdom and power and become that next level of what we as human beings today can achieve. We use the phrase a couple of times, right? This is about actualizing potential. And for those of you who are philosophy geeks, that phrase should be very powerful and meaning for you because we're coming back from the Greek philosophy space on that. David, you described for us the framework, the spark blueprint, where we're starting, where we're shattering spells, we're picturing the future you most want, and we're aligning purpose from our dual prong purpose. We're rising and we are collaborating and amplifying for our effectiveness. If we as people come together and can do these things, we, I think, can change the world and we can create a much brighter future for everybody. David, thank you so much for being here with me today. And audience members, you know the rules. Don't get left behind. Join me next time.
That's it for today's episode of Disrupt and Innovate. Head over to iTunes and subscribe to the show.